Happy 4th of July, 2020. I'm Rachel Baird. Next to me is Ed Peruta.
I'm Ed
transmitting
Peruta.
live from the American News Media Center in Central Connecticut. This is Summary Judgment Talk Show. Hi, Ed. Are you excited about the 4th of July?
Oh, yeah.
You know, it's the 4th of July in most countries, so what I should say, we're celebrating the 4th of July here in the United States.
Why don't we just call it our Independence Day?
Independence Day.
But
And
I think maybe the French celebrated on the same day.
I don't know. Don't they have Bastille Day
Bastille
on
Day.
The 14th?
Oh, is it the 14th?
I thought it was the 14th.
Yeah, they were 10 days late.
Yeah. So we have the Declaration of Independence behind us. There's plenty of places on the internet where you can listen to it read, which is pretty interesting. It takes about 10 minutes. So invite you to do that and all of our listeners. We're going to talk about a couple things today. There was an important Second Amendment case here in Connecticut. And we've recently learned about an important case out of the Veterans Court of Appeals that maybe you want to talk about a little, Ed. And then anything else that comes to mind.
Yes.
We're also going to do kind of a look back to 6 years ago when I was doing the show on July 5th, Saturday, 2014, with our former co-host, Matt Tiska, who has since relocated to New Hampshire. So I think he stopped doing the show.
Matt.
I know, I missed him too. He used to sit in the middle of us, and
Matt in the middle.
a lot of people called him Matt in the middle, and he would always give us his.
But I got to tell you, he tweets some very interesting tweets.
He does our social
our
media,
tweets, yeah.
yeah, off of Twitter and then
Yeah.
Facebook, Summary Judgment.
Yeah.
He really keeps up with it.
Ah,
So back in 2007, Ed, we began a case on behalf of Peter Cook, who's a resident of Connecticut, sits on the Board of Firearms Permanent Examiners, about the length of time that the Board of Firearms was taking to hear appeals from either revocations of pistol permits or denials of pistol permits. And the case went on for 4 or 5 years because it went up to the Second Circuit after the district court dismissed it, and the Second Circuit said, you do have a liberty interest in having a pistol permit in Connecticut based on the state constitution. At that time, Heller and McDonald hadn't yet been decided, I think. And then it went back down to the district court, and we did lots of discovery and lots of depositions. And your cousin, Bill Knapp, former chief of the Wethersfield Police Department, since deceased, was on the board, and while he was on the board, the wait time for a hearing had decreased from 24 months to about 8 months. And the judge in the state court, in the district court case, Vanessa Bryant, said, you know what? The board, it has volunteer members. They're trying their best, and 8 months is good enough. They're doing all they can. And we said, but it's a Second Amendment right at issue.
I'm pissed.
It doesn't matter.
I'm pissed.
I know. It doesn't matter if they're trying their best. It's a Second Amendment issue, and maybe you should hire people. Maybe they shouldn't be volunteer. And I said to the court, I said, but the Second Circuit, I said, but it's 8 months now. What's to prevent it from going back up to 24 months? If you don't set some kind of standard now in the time period that a hearing has to be held. And they just found that the Second Amendment was not an important enough issue to set any standards or guidelines by. So, June 8th, 2020, come forward about 10 years.
Nah, you're missing something. You're missing why I'm pissed.
Okay, go ahead. There was another case that Judge Bryant decided shortly after she decided
Hold
that
on.
8 months was
Hold on.
was a good enough period of time.
Hold on. We have a judge in the state of Connecticut. And I'm going to go as far as to say a liberal female judge in the state of Connecticut who was hearing Peter Cook's claim that 24 months was too long, and Judge Vanessa Bryant got it to, well, it's down to 8 months, that's good enough. Now, I don't care how you cut the mustard, the Second Amendment is a constitutional amendment. It's a given to everybody, or everybody's ownership of it is acknowledged under the 14th Amendment. Supreme Court says everybody is entitled to enjoy the benefits of the Second Amendment. 8 months is...
Unless you're disqualified.
Yeah.
But that's a separate
Unless you're
issue.
disqualified.
We're assuming, we're
Unless
just
you're
talking about people who are disqualified.
Unless you're disqualified. Now, another case came down the pipe shortly after that and was in front of Vanessa Bryant.
Is it pipe or pike?
Huh?
Is it pipe or pike?
Pipe. Sewer pipe.
Okay.
It could be pike.
It could be pike.
It could be down the Berlin Turnpike.
Mm-hmm.
Pike. Another case came in front of Judge Vanessa Bryant, and it involved delays in approving food stamps. Now, she ruled, I want to say that she ruled that the state must approve and provide food stamps within either 30 or 60 days from the bench. That was her ruling.
I'm going to look up that case because we always talk about it, but I want to make sure I get the fact. Don't look it up on the air.
No. Well, I want them to know before the end of the show.
But I will tell you that in Connecticut, when you're arrested for drunk driving, you're entitled to a hearing within 30 days on whether your license should be suspended. And during that time period, you still get to drive. And if they don't give you a hearing within 30 days, you keep your license. And driving, as far as I know, is not a constitutional right.
But I got to tell you, she put more weight on a person receiving food stamps than she did on a person's ability to obtain a permit to carry pistols and revolvers, which is a Second Amendment right.
It's true.
How, and now, and you see that never, somehow the Second Circuit short-circuited it, and Cook never got to go up to the Supreme Court. Did you apply Cook?
We did. We definitely did.
Supreme Court turned it away. Okay?
They
I don't
denied
think
cert.
that this Supreme Court would turn it away.
They're turning away gun cases right and left. You can never know what cases.
And
they're
I'm going to
take.
tell you why I
The
think.
timing has to be
I'm
perfect.
going to tell you why. I think that John Roberts has gone rogue liberal. I think that John Roberts is the reason why they're afraid to bring a Second Amendment case.
Yeah, they're worried
That he's going to
it'll
side
go
with,
5-4 the other way.
he's going to side with a group of justices that are going to say we're not taking the case or rule against Second Amendment privileges.
As important as it was in 2016 to elect Trump and to avoid giving Hillary Clinton the opportunity to appoint new members to the Supreme Court, it's just as, or maybe more important in 2020. Because if Joe Biden is elected, and I still don't believe he's going to be the Democratic candidate, but if Joe Biden is elected, there may be 2 or 3 resignations off the Supreme Court
Almost immediately.
to provide him an opportunity to appoint people, and then there may be naturally people falling off the Supreme Court during his 4 years in office, and that'll be a mess. That'll be a mess for gun
Look,
rights.
Let me explain something that I believe. Okay, I'm a certified pistol safety instructor in the state of Connecticut. I wrote my own lesson plan that was approved by the state police so that I could teach my plan rather than any other plan. And it was real quiet for a long time. But I've started to get calls, people wanting me to give them a class. And I'm referring them to Fred Valenti because of my heart condition and stuff like that and COVID. But I mean, I could do COVID with them sitting 20 feet away. But I'm going to tell you, with everything that's been happening in the last couple of months, with the violent demonstrations in this country, more and more people are going to be looking to obtain firearms and exercise the Second Amendment right to acquire it, possess it, and carry it, okay, for self-defense. Now, I saw that couple down in Georgia, I guess it was.
I don't know where it was, but
the mobs was going to come at their house and walk across their property. The woman's out there with a pistol and the guy's out there with what looked like an AR-15 saying, "Not on my house."
I guess they live on a road that was private, that actually had a gate shutting it off from the public. Not a heavy-duty gate from what I understand, but a gate nonetheless. And the demonstrators came through the gate, and there was a picture that everybody's seen by now where the woman's in a black and white striped shirt and what do they call those, yoga pants, and then the husband is in the, you know, khaki pants or whatever. And you know, there's been a lot of fun made of these people.
Huh.
And I can guarantee the picture that they chose to put up was probably the least flattering picture of every picture they could have chosen. But nonetheless, what were their options? Should they have stayed in the house and cowered? You know? Or should they have joined the demonstrators? I mean, what exactly do people think they should have done? Just stayed in their house and not said anything or done anything? Maybe they shouldn't have gone out and waved their firearms.
Well, let me tell you something. If you stay in your house and you say you cower, say, "I just want to get involved. But I've got firearms in it, but I don't want to get involved." By the time they're breaking down your door, you don't know who or what you're shooting on the other side of the door. Step outside, display your firearms, and say, probably in Georgia, "I have a 30-round magazine. If you got 50 people, you're going to win the issue. But 30 of you ain't going home tonight." That's it. No problem.
And of course, nobody is discussing the demonstrators breaking down the gate and going on a private road.
Rachel, nobody discusses the violations that are committed prior to the shooting or the threat of shooting. Nobody is considering. You knew it was a private road. You knew it was a gated community. Well, we're going to go through because we can go through.
And now Minneapolis, or the governor of Minnesota, is requesting $500 million from Donald Trump, the feds, to fix the destruction that was done there. So we're all going to have to
And
be
at the same time,
we're all
they're
going to
stripping
pay
their police department of $1.5 million or $1 million.
Right.
Okay, or 150, and then, you know, I mean, right now Seattle's taking a section of their city back. And I can only imagine the human defecation that's all over the sidewalks and the alleyways in that area. It is what it is.
Who in their right mind would even consider moving to Seattle now?
I have heard, it could be rumors, businesses are leaving Seattle.
Yeah.
They're leaving, saying, "We ain't going there."
So maybe
There's
they will get
going to
city.
be some people who are going to leave Soho district of New York. They're going to say, no, I can't have my business there. Because some people, well, take me. I own American News. It's a very small organization. Over 30 years, I have acquired, and all of my equipment is paid for. Somebody comes in and destroys it all, I'm starting from scratch.
Well,
what if I don't have the resources to replace it?
Well, and some people might say, "Oh, well, that's what insurance is for." But there are some things that are not replaceable. Video, pictures, insurance doesn't cover that. Notes, documents.
I love talking to you.
Yeah.
Because the first person that says, well, you got insurance, I said, and do you have life insurance? Don't tell me about your family. Don't cry to me about your family. Do you have a life insurance policy before you go out on these protests? Think about it. You've got to think about your family that you left at home.
Oh, I get it. That took me a little while.
Did it take you a little while?
Yeah, no, I understand.
So you're going to come to me and say, what was it, Target and auto store that burned? Oh yeah, but they have insurance.
Well, it's kind of like if a firearm is stolen from your house, it's almost your fault now. You know?
The criminal gets away with it, but you get thrown in jail.
So we've
And I
talked.
apologize for drinking water, but she got a refrigerator fixed with the ice machines working, and I got to tell you something. I am.
You have had
and
ice
I-
before.
No, but I am an ice water holic.
Well, yeah. You've been worse, but that's when you were sick that you had to drink all that water, so it's gotten better.
No, that's how I found out I was a diabetic.
Exactly.
I was drinking a gallon of ice
All
water
the time.
3 times a day.
I didn't want to reveal your personal health issue. That's why I didn't go into details.
Ah.
I was leaving that up to you.
Yeah.
By the way, before we forget, you're coming up on a
5
big
days.
anniversary this
5
year.
days from now, I have my new heart anniversary. And
July 8th.
I don't know who my donor was. But to me, my donor still is. Because a part of my donor is still alive. And he resides in my chest. And I don't know, let's say it was a very bad situation that he lost his life. And the family would be upset. You know, I don't want to upset the family. But all my life, ever since they started the donor program on your driver's license, I've always been a donor. Never did I think that I would be a recipient. I figured I'd just die. And I don't
Well,
think-
I remember when they told you that they were considering putting you on the track for a heart transplant. And you were 70 years old, and I thought, I didn't even think you were going to be in the game.
Oh, wait, whoa, hold on.
Oh, maybe you were 69.
I think I was 69.
Yeah.
I was 70 and a half when they gave me my heart, and the cutoff for getting a heart, and it's not rock solid, but the cutoff is they normally don't do transplants for people over 70. But Dr. Gluck said that I was such a good candidate, even though I was 69 and 70, that they decided to transplant me rather than giving me what they called a left ventricle assist LVAD.
Device. LVAD.
Left ventricle assist device, where you wear 2 batteries outside and like shoulder holsters, and they punch a hole in your chest and put a tube through that's got the electricity going through it, and there's a whirly pump that, you know, pumps your heart, because people who wear LVADs don't have a pulse. It's a constant flow system.
And that can suffice during the waiting period between your heart failing and the transplant.
But when you're 70 and they put one in, if you got to wait 3 years for a heart, now you're 73.
Right.
And they sit there and say, well, why don't you just live with the LVAD? Now, listen, I thank everybody at Hartford Hospital for everything they did for me. But I really don't know how to thank the donor family.
Well, you wouldn't have contact with them unless they agreed, because there's a certain process you go through, and they have the choice.
Well, I just, we don't need to talk about it anymore.
Yeah,
gotta
we got it.
talk, but
We're gonna go back to the gun issue.
I'm just saying that people need to be appreciative of those people who are donors.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So we talked about this. Oh, we have a call. I'm being
Okay.
Eric. Oh, right.
Hold
Just
on.
press speaker, right?
Do I just hit speaker? Are you there? Eric, are you there? Hold on.
Is
I-
it?
I don't know how to do this.
Well, here, why don't you pick the phone
Pick
up?
the phone up. Eric,
How's that?
hold on.
There we go.
Are you on the speakerphone now?
Yes.
Oh,
Okay. We have a new phone system.
Okay.
And
Well, let's see what Eric has to say. Hi,
hey,
Eric.
Well, hold on. Hey, buddy, how you doing?
Hey, happy heart anniversary to you, sir.
Oh yeah. So how's your beautiful wife?
She's doing well. Thanks for asking.
Did you stay? Go ahead.
May I interject? May I interject for a moment?
Yes.
Yes.
About these protests that are going on right now in America, they're finding to be true that these are sponsored events. So, for instance, in New York, when Fifth Avenue's windows were shattered, there was a pallet of bricks delivered to the scene. Who paid for that? Who trucked that in? These are the questions that should be asked. But when you have mayors like Bill de Blasio, who's painting Black Lives Matters in the middle of the street, and purposely trying to cause anarchy, you can't really get anywhere. So, I just think that they are trying to destabilize the country. They are trying to cause the most panic and chaos they can before this election to dethrone the Republicans. Can anyone dispute that?
No. I can't.
But on the other hand, it's interesting to be having this conversation on the 4th of July because some people might ask, Eric, what's wrong with that? What's wrong with when you determine that your government isn't what you think it should be, attempting to revolt and have a new government? Maybe that's the way they look at it.
Okay, well, what if the side with all the guns starts revolting then against that, since they don't want to be the victims? Then you have a civil war, right?
Yeah, you do. That's exactly what you have. And I don't think that the people that you're talking about who love America and recognize that it has its issues but want to work within the system to solve those issues, I don't think they're going to allow it to be destabilized. I think they're going to sit back. They're going to sit back for a while because they're afraid of saying what they think, but people can only be afraid to say what they think for so long, and then they do something about it.
And then they're totally taking advantage of the virus. When this virus came about, they all probably got together and said, let's make it as horrible as we possibly can, for as long as we can, to destabilize the administration, Trump's administration. I've never seen a president get destroyed in press conferences like this president.
It's terrible to watch, and I don't know how he's holding up under the strain. He's a human being.
He plays golf.
And
He plays golf.
Eric, did you see him in that picture coming across the White House lawn? I think he was coming back from Tulsa or something. I've never seen him look like that.
I didn't see it.
Yeah, his tie was undone. He was leaning over. His face. He looked like a tired human being, like we all look after a long day at work, right? So I don't see. There's nothing wrong with it, but he hardly ever shows that side of him, and I don't know how.
I remember either when he announced or shortly after he won the election, Michael Bloomberg had by invitation only, gathering of major media people. And I believe that it was at that meeting that people came up with a anti-Trump media campaign theory. How do we do this? How do we keep the negativity going for the next 4 years to get to the next election?
Excuse me, there's a larger conspiracy going on here.
Oh, yeah.
Before we even had COVID, the banks were not trusting each other enough to lend each other money overnight. The interbank lending rate, the government had to put billions and billions of dollars into this just because the banks didn't trust each other. What happens when banks don't trust each other? So I think that there was a systemic failure in the economy before COVID hit that they were plastering over, okay? And then when COVID hit, you have the United Nations looking for a one world currency now, and globalism. It's just this whole thing stinks to high hell, and they are trying to destabilize to make a one world currency, a globalist one world septic tank of like the euro. They're going to make it one big currency, which will eventually fail if it ever happened, which I hope it doesn't.
And
I just think it's a larger conspiracy.
I've been saying, how on earth will Joe Biden be able to be the Democratic nominee? But on the other hand, maybe that's exactly what they want in office, because he's not going to fight any of these things that you're talking about, Eric. He's not going to
Right.
fight destabilization. I'm not even sure he's going to be able to even know what it is.
They control him, absolutely.
They control him.
Here's what I see, and I'm going to put it into the perspective I've used before. The pandemic is like a tsunami coming at this country. And there wasn't enough time to build a bridge or a berm big enough to keep the water out. Some people have used this pandemic to get everything they wanted originally. Example, I heard on the radio, I don't know whether it's true or not, that they are going for a fourth bailout with money. Now, I know that this government can do 25 or 30 trillion dollar, multi-trillion dollar bailouts. Do you agree with that, Eric? We could do 30.
Yeah, sure, and then it's $10 a loaf for bread.
That's exactly right. In other words, go back and look at post-World War I Germany, when their debt to the Allies who wanted reparations for the war was so great that it took a wheelbarrow full of marks to buy a loaf of bread.
So you're
But-
referring
but-
to the Weimar Republic in Germany, right?
The what?
The
Yes.
Weimar Republic of
What was it
Germany.
called?
The Weimar,
Okay.
W-E-I-M-A-R.
Okay, I don't know what it was called, but I know
How
that.
do you know how to spell that, Rachel? Oh my word.
Well, I think in Germany they say it Weimar. But anyway, go ahead.
Just oh my God.
But
Okay,
Eric,
go ahead, Ed.
Eric, she went to the Defense Language School in Monterey, California, in the Air Force, and they taught her German.
That
I
helps.
just
Yeah, it does help.
that you spelled that out.
But what I'm trying to say is this: is that if you look at every package that is being offered because of this pandemic, they want to take money away from law enforcement and give it to social services.
Yeah.
Now, they're not saying the George Washington Bridge is going to have to get replaced someday. Let's start now. The Tappan Zee Bridge has been replaced. But the infrastructure of this country is going to have to get replaced someday. Where are we going to get the money for that?
$10 trillion already.
Huh?
It's $10 trillion already. The price tag for the COVID is $10 trillion already.
Right, and
Right?
it's like
So when Obama left office, I think it was our tab was $2 trillion.
the
Now maybe we're
Democrats.
up to $12 trillion or something like that.
I'm sorry, but the far left liberals and the Democratic Party under Joe Biden don't give three shits about what the budgets are going to be in the future.
No.
No.
In other words,
And if you
can
yeah,
buy-
if you look at other central
Go ahead, Eric.
if you look at other central banks around the world, they're doing the same thing. So if you look at the exchange rate between the euro and the dollar, I think it's like $1.20 right now. That's the lowest it's been in many years. The euro is in a great deal of trouble. A great deal of trouble. So is the Chinese currency, which doesn't really float on the free market exchange. But so are all the other central banks of the world are in major trouble. They've been printing money out of control. And it looks like where the cleanest shirt in a dirty laundry bin. Is that how they say it? We're the cleaners of the dirty shirts.
Yeah, I like that.
But you know, Greenspan, remember the former Federal Reserve Chairman Alan Greenspan?
Yeah.
He's actually still alive.
Married to Andrea Mitchell.
He wrote a dissertation in 1967 how the Achilles heels of Keynesian economics, which is, you know, the central bank's theory, the Achilles heel is gold. You can't print it. And you could see the price of, I mean, they keep shorting gold, try to keep the price down, and you're almost at an all-time high in the dollar right now. It's about $1,800 an ounce. So I guess you're going to have massive inflation coming up soon after this. Now, I don't know if that would be in real estate, because what they're going to do is go in and increase all the taxes on the real estate. But, you know, you'll see it in the form of lots of real things and real values are going to go up. And it's going to be quite expensive for everyone to just live because of what they're doing.
Let me give you.
Everyone's standard of living is going to go down. Everyone's standard of living is going to go down because of this.
Let me give you some examples of things that are in my head when I talk about the surfboards on the tsunami. Here in Connecticut, probably across the country, everyone has wanted smaller class sizes. Okay? Now, the way I've told the story for years is, when I was in 7th grade, I remember, because I always had to sit in front of the teacher, because I was getting in trouble all the time, she would take a stack of books, these blue essay books, and she would give 6 to the first person in each row. Take one, pass it back. Take one, pass it back. There were 5 people between me and the door. That meant there were 6 across and 6 deep. That's 36 students in the classroom. One teacher. That one teacher had absolute control over the classroom. You fucked up, you went to the vice principal. It was progressive discipline. Detention with the teacher, detention in the cafeteria after school, go to the vice principal, second time to the vice principal, they call up your parent. They bring your parent down, third time, you're out of school and you're at home. And your parent would have to stay home from work or do whatever to watch you to make sure you're not out watching the street, because there was a truant officer out there. Now, because of COVID, they're in Connecticut. Here's what they're talking about, and this is going to lead into what you're going to talk about. They're going to have to reduce the class sizes. They're doing away with certain sports, and they're going to make the gymnasiums into classrooms, because they're going to have smaller class sizes. That's what they want. They want smaller class sizes. They're going to have to hire more teachers. They're going to have to hire more school buses, because you can't pack them all on one bus. So maybe one bus route will tune into 3, and they'll spread people out in the I don't know. But they're saying
that's not going to happen. They're going to lay off teachers. Unless the federal government bails out the states, they're going to have to fire teachers.
It's going to go on.
Maybe you know what? I expect to bail out. Why not?
But you know something, Eric? The Democrats see this as a windfall of money. Who is going to object to COVID
You're
money?
right.
Everybody's going to vote to approve it. Okay? Now, we're going to get, and then you come into the Bernie Sanders. Well, I'll tell you, if I was a college student and I had debt of $100,000 because I chose to go to a $25,000 a year school, or $36,000 I chose to go to a $9,000 a year school. Okay?
Yeah.
You're gonna wipe out my student loans? I'll vote for you. Oh, wait a minute. You gave me unemployment. You gave me an extra $600 a week. It's supposed to run out the end of this month. Those people getting $600 extra a month with their unemployment, a week, may turn around and say, whoa, you can't stop this. Now we're back to protesting. We want our money. And who is it that says AOC, whatever, Cortez or whatever her name is?
Yeah. Yeah, she's out of New
She's
York.
the one that wants to give every American an annual stipend. No, like in the state of Alaska, when the oil boom came on the North Slope, every Alaskan resident was giving a portion of the oil revenue, and they were actually
Right.
getting paid to live in Alaska. And some people want that across the country. Every human
Right, but we
being
don't
should
have any
get.
revenue in the country. We don't have enough revenue. Alaska has the revenue.
Eric, does she represent your district, Ocasio?
No, thankfully, I would have moved.
Well, what do people think of her down there in New York? Does she have a lot? It seems like she has a lot of support because somebody challenged her, I think, in the primary, and she won.
She won her primary.
Right.
Yeah, she's in a city. It's like mostly city and mostly rentals and a lot of immigrants and you know. I guess if you work your whole life and you make something out of your life and you have a little savings and you're doing well for yourself, you're not going to vote for anyone like that. 'Cause she's just looking to tear everything up and blame everyone for everything. So.
But you can't. The American public as a whole, and I think that we all see it. We'd have to be mentally deficient not to. Okay. Everybody is seeing that if you offer to give away everything, in other words, I'll tell you what, you come to my campaign rally and everybody that comes in the door, I'm going to give $1,000 to everybody that comes into my auditorium, okay? You would have riots trying to get in the door to get the $1,000. Can we agree on that?
AOC, yes. AOC wants illegals to be able to vote, just so you know.
She what?
She wants illegal aliens
Right.
to have the right to
Right.
vote.
Right. Because then they would be able to vote for all of the things that they're not entitled to. Make them entitled to.
AOC hates our country. Her father died of cancer. She blames our country for her father's death. So she wants to ruin the country, take over the country like Comrade de Blasio does. And by the way, de Blasio walked in on his father's suicide. So the mayor de Blasio's father had blew his head off with a 12-gauge shotgun. A lot of people don't know this. And he was like a war protester and a real 60s guy. And he discovered his father's suicide. I think his father was enlisted at one point in the army. And I guess he blamed his death on the country. A lot of these people, they just hate America. You know what I'm saying? They hate America. We have the best, most functioning democracy of melting pot of immigrants in the world, and yet they just want to tear it apart. There's no other. I mean, we're not perfect, but there's no other better melting pot in the world with more freedoms and more rights. And
Hey,
they
Eric.
don't acknowledge that. They don't acknowledge that.
I'm going to give you. Let me just one
No,
more.
I
Go
wanted
ahead.
to ask Eric that I'm hearing that a lot of people are leaving New York. Is that
In droves. In droves. And if you want to know statistics, look at the price of U-Hauls out of New York versus the price of U-Hauls into New York. It's like 1 to 3.
And why is that? Not the price of U-Hauls, but why are people leaving?
Well, less rights, higher taxes, poor government.
You know, there was a case I was going to talk about today, but oh no, we're not running out of time, are we?
No, we got
we're
21
good.
minutes left.
Yeah, it's a gun case, and in this gun case, a district court judge up here in Connecticut says that even though the police agencies started doing what they were supposed to do, that doesn't make the case moot because they may begin doing the wrong thing again, so a judge needs to rule on it. And I think that probably hits close to home with you because isn't that the reason the Supreme Court decided not to address that New York case?
So you're talking about the New York State Rifle Association suing for the rights of people who live in Manhattan to be able to take their firearms to fire ranges outside of New York City, right?
Yes.
Right, so the Supreme Court backed off on that because the city said, we're going to let you carry your firearms and go to ranges outside of the city. So the Supreme Court backed off on that case, which they should not have. because that would have been a huge win for gun rights.
Well, they shouldn't have backed off of it because there's no reason why New York can't just change it back to the way it was. And then what are you supposed to do? Start the case all over again to get up to the Supreme
Exactly.
Court?
That's a very good point.
Yeah, I mean the judge here in Connecticut wasn't buying it. He said, I don't care what you say that you stopped it or you're going to stop it. I'm still going to rule on it, so you can't do it again in the future. And I'm yeah.
Basically, in New York, our only hope right now is rests upon Ruth Bader Ginsburg. We think our head is being kept alive in a jar of formaldehyde on wheels at this point.
Well, I don't think that's the case, but you know, each side. I mean, the conservatives are talking about putting more people on the Supreme Court now than 9, and that's happened before in our country when people are dissatisfied with the Supreme Court because people feel like the Supreme Court's turned on Donald Trump. You were talking about that at the beginning of the show, John Roberts, but you know.
Yeah, I heard. And don't forget who appointed John Roberts. It was George W. Bush and the Illuminatis.
You know, all I can say is this. We're going to get what we deserve. We are going to get what we deserve. And, you know, when those people, you know, now see, I could say things, but then I'd probably get in trouble.
Right. Don't say those things.
I knew Roberts was no good when he voted for Obamacare. They weren't even arguing whether Obamacare, whether it was a tax or not. And when he did with Obamacare, he showed his colors.
Yeah.
So Roberts showed his colors with the Obamacare case.
And he's a young guy. He's young.
Yeah, he's a young guy, and
I'm going to say
a real imposter. He's an imposter.
I'm going to say what I was going to say because I've had time to think about it, and I don't think that it's going to get me in trouble. There will come a time in this country when you will have masses of people, just a sea of individuals that you can see. Okay? Can you picture that?
Okay.
Okay, sure, yeah.
Like the concert in Las Vegas. And one person in a high hotel room with a bump stop automatic weapon is going to be able to do damage to those protesters or to those people. That's what I'm afraid of. That is what I'm afraid of, is that this is going to turn into a very violent situation. And once it goes...
You have the National Guard. I mean, we have the Army, you have the National Guard, and, you know, they could just deploy OC gas or long-range audio device. They can control crowds, and we haven't even been doing that yet. So, you know, listen, look at all the other countries, like Spain and France, they're using their militaries every day.
Eric.
But don't we have...
The National Guard went out and recruited college students or college-age students to join the National Guard on the promise of a free college education. Never did those people expect to be deployed 2, 3, and 4 different times to the Middle East. They thought they're just going to go to a meeting once a month, a drill for 2 weeks in the summer. They're going to do it for 3 or 4 years, and then they're going to get out and they got the college paid for. Okay?
Yeah.
You think that there's not a percentage of citizen soldiers who are starting to think like the protesters?
Oh, I know, and absolutely, they're talking about certain police officers and certain people in the military.
And they've got guns.
Right. No, it goes across the spectrum.
Yeah, you can't just say the military has no sympathizers to the protests. The military has no minorities who feel like the protesters.
Or families who are protesters.
Yeah,
They're families,
yeah.
You know?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Listen.
What did Rachel just say about the family? What did you say?
The people in the military, the police, they have families who are protesting. Part of their family, you know, their family. They're going to be like the Civil War, up against, you know, brother against brother. In this thing.
That's interesting that you mentioned that. So what percentage would you think are for the protesters? You know, people who are police, people who are taking the knee on the job, people who are in the military. What percentage? 10%? I mean, the media.
I'm
I don't
gonna
think-
go.
I don't
I'm gonna
think
go
it's
with a minimum of 10.
The media could put a magnifying glass on that 10% and make it look like 200%.
Absolutely.
Got another
Absolutely.
phone? Eric, we got another phone call.
Wow, how special to get a call from you.
Congratulations on your anniversary and great show. Take care, guys.
Listen, call next week. I'll
Bye,
talk to
Eric
you. Bye.
from New York.
Okay. Now,
I think you have to pick it up.
pick it up.
Yeah.
Okay, hold on. Are you there? Hello? Hello?
Hello?
Oh,
Yep.
there we go.
Okay, here we go. You're on.
Hi, Ed. This is Charles Nichols. Glad to see you doing well.
Good. What's going on?
Well, we were talking about second minister cases earlier, and I just
Charles
wanted
Nichols.
your viewers to know that there are two cases coming up out of the Ninth Circuit, which the Supreme Court will probably have to take. There's, of course, my California open carry lawsuit, where, unlike all of the other cases that have ever been filed, I do have a home nexus. If I step 1 or 2 feet outside the door of my home with a loaded firearm or a modern unloaded firearm, I'm breaking the law.
So Charles,
So,
let me just
sure.
let people know who's calling. This is Charles Nichols,
Yeah.
and he has a gun case in California that's been going on for quite some time. And it sounds like have you filed for cert with the Supreme Court or?
Oh, no. I'm George Young Jr., who has a case out of Hawaii, argued his case 3 days before mine, and as you know, that gave him precedent.
Okay.
So his case was put on hold, say, pending the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association, which was dismissed as moot. So they've now lifted the stay, and he is scheduled to argue his case before an in-bank court on the week of September 21st. I argued my case over 2 years ago before a three-judge panel of the Court of Appeals. 12 days later, because of the Young v. Hawaii case, my submission for decision was vacated pending the mandate in Young v. Hawaii. So, but there are two cases. Hawaii has not issued a concealed carry or open carry. And Young says, I don't care which I get, give me either, and I'm satisfied. And they haven't issued one in 20 years, except for security guards. So, in my case, there are no permits. I live in Los Angeles County, and the only handgun open carry permits available are in counties in a population of fewer than 200,000 people. So there's absolutely no way I can legally step outside the door of my home with a loaded firearm or a modern unloaded firearm without breaking the law. So, and as I said, I step outside the door of my home and in the privilege of my home, which is always treated as the inside of one's home. So, the Supreme Court is going to have to say, well, Heller is about carrying a firearm, not just possessing a handgun. You literally could not carry a firearm inside of your home, a loaded firearm inside of your home, because of the DC ordinance.
That's Heller, right.
It creates a split with every single federal circuit and every state court of last resort. So mine we got to take, or they basically said Heller is overruled, or de facto overruled. George Young will create a split whichever way they decide, because some circuits have said, well, heightened scrutiny the state can require, and his case is limited to handguns, which is always a mistake. So. And the other states have said, no, you don't need heightened scrutiny. So either way, they're going to get a split there.
So Charles, you are going into a lot of legal details that people may not be familiar with, or they may be familiar with some of them. Is there a site that people can go to learn more about your case if they've heard something and you've piqued their interest and they want to make sure that they're getting it? Okay, what is it?
It's California OpenCarry.com.
Okay, so that's CaliforniaOpenCarry.com if people want to get the whole history and what's going on in Charles' case. And you know, I hope your case, I hope somebody's case gets to the Supreme Court to decide about, you know, the right to carry in public. I mean that's basically what you're talking about, right? We need to establish that, or not establish it. We need the court to recognize
I gotta
it.
tell you something.
Well, let me hear.
No, go ahead.
Was I correct, or did I misstate it?
Well, no, yeah, in public, my case is not limited to the public. I can't step outside my home to the curtilage of my home
Oh,
without breaking. So there's an in-home nexus
right.
that the Supreme Court, they can't duck it. Because if there's anything held that is you have a right to carry a loaded firearm in your home.
Right.
And the Supreme Court has also held that the curtilage of your home, the area just surrounding your home, outside the door of your home, has always held that that's part of the inside of your home.
Yeah, I mean, here every state's different. Here in Connecticut, if you have a pistol permit, excuse me, if you don't have a pistol permit, you can possess a firearm on your property,
Right.
outside or inside. So yeah, but of course, you know, states are free to recognize as many rights as they want. They don't have to. The bare minimum is decided by the Constitution and federal law. So, wow, we wish you the best of luck, and it was really nice hearing from you. Okay.
Okay, well, thank you, and once again, I'm glad to see you doing well, Ed.
Yep.
Thank
Take
you
care
so
of yourself.
much. Take care.
All right.
Well,
Thank you.
that's a nice segue into the case that we're going to talk about out of here in Connecticut, right? Are you ready for that?
Go ahead.
Okay, so here in
You got
Connecticut.
8 minutes. You can do it.
Here in Connecticut, like most states, our governor declared an emergency, and here it was declared on March 10th. On March 17th, he issued an executive order that said law enforcement agencies do not have to fingerprint pistol permit applicants. Okay? Which in Connecticut means basically that you're not going to get a pistol permit if you're not fingerprinted because it goes to the criminal background check. We have an organization here called the Connecticut Citizens Defense League. Holly Sullivan is now the president, and she wrote a letter to the governor, Governor Lamont, on April 10th saying this violates our Second Amendment rights. This means people cannot get a pistol permit, which in the state of Connecticut allows you to legally, under our laws, carry a handgun
It also
outside the
violates
home.
the Connecticut State Constitution, but go ahead.
Right, exactly. That's why I try to put that. And so CCDL sought a preliminary injunctive relief against Governor Lamont and the Department of Public Safety and 4 local police organizations saying you have to start fingerprinting people because under the law in Connecticut, law enforcement agencies cannot refuse to fingerprint pistol permit applicants. Okay? And we got a judge here, Jeffrey Meyer, Meyer, in Connecticut, and he got the case. And the case was filed. Of course, Governor Lamont didn't respond to Ms. Sullivan by saying, okay, we're going to change our law or whatever. So Judge Meyer got the case, and he ended up issuing the preliminary injunction. And along the way, and this is why we talked about Peter Cook's case to begin with, along the way, he just said some stunning things in support of the Second Amendment that at least here in Connecticut, we don't run into very often. So 2 attorneys here, Craig Fishbein and Doug Dubitsky, who also happen to be state reps, filed this case. They're members of CCDL, or they're associated with CCDL. So it was 2 state reps that filed this case. And let me just read you the paragraph out of Judge Meyer's decision dated June 8th, 2020. He says, there's no merit to the argument by Governor Lamont or the Commissioner of Public Safety that a temporary delay occasioned by the suspension of fingerprinting does not result in injury. In other words, the governor and the police were trying to argue, oh, well, we've just suspended fingerprinting for a little while, and what does it really matter if people don't get their permits? No big deal. This is what Judge Meyer said to that. He said, if the governor and the commissioner were to issue a gag order barring plaintiffs from exercising their First Amendment free speech rights for the balance of the COVID-19 crisis, plaintiffs would surely suffer injury despite the temporary nature of the crisis. The same holds true for plaintiffs' exercise of their Second Amendment rights. That's beautiful language, Ed, isn't it? And
Where is he? Where's he been all my life?
I know, where has he been? And then he has another section in here where he says, I'm less than confident in counsel's representation about what the governor intends to do. Initially, the representation about the governor's intentions arrived by an email from counsel to Chambers, and it was only because the court entered an order instructing that any such representation must, of course, be formally filed on the docket that this representation is even a part of the record. There's no assurance given by the governor and the commissioner that they will not seek to discontinue fingerprinting again in the future. So getting back to the New York case that Eric and I were talking about, our Supreme Court said, oh, well, New York's changed the law, so we're not going to look at it now. We're going to, it's moot. No, Jeffrey Meyer says, no, I don't trust them. I don't trust them to say, oh, we've changed the law and we're respecting their rights now, because they may go back and change it again to not respecting people's Second Amendment rights. So you know what? I'm going to roll, and I'm going to roll in favor of granting this injunction, and the police departments better start fingerprinting as of June 20th. And that's end of story. I don't know if the state's appealing this now, but by the time it gets heard,
Okay.
So the case is, let me just tell you the case in Connecticut Citizens Defense League versus Governor Lamont. It was decided on June 8th, 2020, and it's in the Connecticut District Court. Go ahead, Ed. We're closing it down.
Okay. To Charles Nichols, to any other plaintiffs in Second Amendment issues, my afterthoughts to the Connecticut Citizens Defense League, to Bitsky, and what's his name? Fishbein, who I know personally, okay? There's a bigger fish in the fishbowl. Well, let me put it this way. There's a lot of little fish in the fishbowl that take up more room than the big fish. And that is, when Heller and McDonald came out, every state should have been mandated to review their firearms laws for constitutional compliance. Example, that statement by Lamont that they're not going to do fingerprints. The state police not issuing permits without fingerprints. Connecticut state statute says that if you have been previously fingerprinted, you do not have to submit the fingerprints again, because the fingerprints are part of the positive ID aspect of getting a permit. For example, I've lived in several towns. I'm a rather well-known individual to law enforcement in Connecticut. I walk into a chief of police in my town and I say, do you know who I am? He says, of course I know who you are. I said, let me read this section of the law to you. That if you know me, you don't have to take my fingerprints to prove who I am. He read it and he said, right. I applied for my permit on a Thursday, I had it on a Tuesday. I never had to submit a set of fingerprints to the Rock Hill Police Department. And I also said to the chief, besides, you've taken quite a few set of my fingerprints over the years. They got to be in the system someplace. I was in the military, I was fingerprinted. They demand a DD-214, which is evidence of you've been identified, you've been fingerprinted, the government has your fingerprints on file.
But you know what it all boils down to make it as difficult as
difficult
possible.
But what I'm saying is this, is that when Heller and McDonald came out, they should have read the rules. For example, the most abused aspect of getting a pistol permit in Connecticut is the quote-unquote suitability factor. One chief can say you're not eligible, the next chief can say you are. There's no uniformity to it. And CCDL had the legal resources, the financial resources.
I mean, you can argue there is some uniformity because all the cases go to a board, one board that ultimately decides. And
that you can't get to.
But, right, given what Judge Meyer has said,
okay.
I'm wondering if the time isn't right again to attack the wait time before the board.
Let me give this to you. Let's say that I have my pistol permit revoked and my firearms are seized by the state police. The law says that after 1 year, the firearms are going to be destroyed. but it takes you 2 years to get to the board to get a decision that you can have them back. Nobody took that into consideration when they passed these laws.
Yeah, but the board doesn't tell you you can get your firearms back.
It gives you the permit which lets you walk. It gives you the permit that lets you walk in and say, either buy another one.
I mean, I think the more pertinent issue is when they seize your firearms, take your permit, and you're under a protective order in a family case that could drag out for longer than a year. You can't get your firearms back then. So that's it. Bye. Have a good week.